You drive through it without a thought. 10 lanes of Boston traffic sliding underground into the hum of sodium light. The harbor somewhere over your head. The city pressing down on a ceiling you never look at. It feels permanent. It feels finished. It cost more than any road in American history to make you feel exactly that safe. And it was lying to you. Boston built this to save itself. For most of the 20th century, the traffic downtown ran along an elevated highway called the Central Artery, a rust-green steel viaduct thrown up over the city in 1959. It was designed to carry about 75,000 cars a day. By the early 90s, it was choking on 200,000, jammed solid for up to 10 hours a day, and the projections only got uglier. 16 hours of gridlock a day by 2010. The congestion alone was bleeding an estimated $500 million a year out of the regional economy. So the state made a decision that sounded, at the time, like science fiction. It would take the highway and bury it, tear down the elevated artery, thread a 10-lane expressway underneath the living city, and do the whole thing without ever stopping the traffic overhead. Someone compared it to performing open-heart surgery on a patient who was running a marathon. They called it the Central Artery Tunnel Project. Everyone else called it the Big Dig. And when it was sold to Congress, the price tag was about $2.8 billion, finished by 1998. That is not what happened. By the time the last section opened, the construction bill had reached roughly $14.6 billion, more than 5 times the estimate, making it the most expensive highway project in American history. And even that number is a kind of lie, because it doesn't count the borrowing. Add in decades of interest and the real figure climbs toward $24 billion, a debt the state won't finish paying until 2038. There are people who weren't born when the digging started, who will help pay this off. Here is the part nobody wants to sit with. All that money, all those years, and the tunnel started coming apart almost as soon as it was finished. If that unsettles you as much as it unsettles me, take a second to subscribe before we go under. It genuinely helps the channel. And while you're here, I want to know one thing. What's the biggest public project where you live? The one everybody uses and nobody quite trusts? Drop it in the comments. Now, let's go into the tunnel. The first sign came from the water. On the 15th of September, 2004, less than a year after the last major leg had opened, a wall in the I-93 tunnel breached, and water began pouring in at as much as 300 gallons a minute, backing up rush hour for miles. When engineers went looking, they didn't find one leak. They found hundreds, by some counts between 400 and 700 of them, sending millions of gallons of water into a brand new tunnel. And the worst part was in the paperwork. Investigators found documents showing that managers for the consortium that built it knew the breached wall was faulty when it went in during the late 90s. They didn't replace it. They didn't tell the state. Then there was the concrete itself. A supplier called Aggregate Industries was eventually caught delivering some 5,700 truckloads of substandard concrete into the project, quietly doctoring the records to hide it. The company paid a penalty of $50 million. But by then the concrete was already poured, already load-bearing, already holding up the road you drive on. And then, on the 10th of July, 2006, the tunnel killed someone. Milena Del Valle was 39 years old. She and her husband were driving through the I-90 connector toward Logan Airport when the ceiling let go above them. Some 26 tons of concrete panels came down onto the car. Her husband survived. She did not. The cause turned out to be almost unbearably small. The heavy ceiling panels had been hung from the tunnel roof on bolts anchored with a fast-setting epoxy glue. And that particular epoxy had a flaw called creep. Under constant, patient, unrelenting load, it slowly deforms and lets go. The anchors crept loose over months and years until, one night, they simply released. The most damning detail: the company that made the epoxy had tested it as far back as the mid-90s and had actually warned that this kind of fast-set glue was not suited to holding sustained weight. Federal investigators concluded the collapse could have been avoided. A woman died because an adhesive that was never meant to hold up a ceiling was used to hold up a ceiling. In 2008, the companies that designed and managed the project agreed to pay more than $450 million to settle. No one went to prison for her death, and the consortium was left free to bid on future government work. You'd think that would be the bottom. It wasn't. In February of 2010, an 8-foot light fixture weighing 110 pounds tore loose from the tunnel roof and crashed into the center lane during the morning commute. By pure luck, it hit no one. When inspectors looked closer, they found that salt and damp had been quietly corroding the fixtures the entire time, and they ended up having to strap down some 25,000 lights so the rest wouldn't come down too. The guardrails inside the tunnels turned out to be their own hazard, blamed in a number of high-speed deaths. The soil under one section, frozen solid during construction, began to thaw and settle, opening a void beneath the roadway. Every few years, another part of the thing that was supposed to last a century announces that it will not. And it never really stopped. The tunnels still leak today, on the order of 10 to 12 gallons a minute in places, kept off the road only by banks of pumps running around the clock, and crews sealing cracks that keep reopening. As recently as a few years ago, the state was still signing fresh contracts just to chase the leaks, patch the fireproofing, and slow the corrosion, eating at the steel. 4 workers died building it. The public is still paying it off, and the water is still coming in. So here is what the Big Dig is really about. Not failure, exactly. The traffic did get better. A downtown crossing that used to mean sitting in gridlock for the better part of an hour can now take just minutes, and the ugly steel viaduct that split the city for 50 years is gone, replaced by open parkland. In that sense, it worked. It did the thing it promised. It's about the gap between how finished something looks and how finished it actually is. You drive through it, and the walls are dry where you can see them, and the lights are on, and the lanes are smooth, and every bit of that is engineered to tell you the same reassuring story. This is solved. This is permanent. This is safe. Meanwhile, a few feet past the tile, the water is finding its way in the way it always has. The steel is rusting a little more, and somewhere a pump you will never see is running, so that you never have to think about any of it. The most expensive road ever built in America wasn't beaten by an earthquake, or a flood, or the slow passing of 100 years. It started coming apart on its own, quietly, from the inside, before the last section was even open. And it's still down there right now, under the harbor, holding up a city that agreed a long time ago to stop looking at the ceiling.